In this video, we'll talk about 4 depreciation methods. Our first method is straight line or SL depreciation. In straight line depreciation, book value decreases linearly with time, as can be seen on this figure here. We calculate our annual depreciation change, capital D sub T, by taking the first cost and subtracting the salvage value and multiplying it by the depreciation rate. So B represents our first cost, S represents our estimated salvage value, and D represents our depreciation rate. You may also see this expressed as 1 over n, so you could see this as B minus S over n. Once we have our annual depreciation charge, we can also calculate our book value at year t. So year t is somewhere along this x-axis, along this timeline. And we can do that by taking our first cost B and subtracting t, the number of years we are along here, times our annual depreciation charge. Let's look at an example to make it more intuitive. If an asset has a first cost of $60,000 with a salvage value of $10,000, after 5 years, what is the annual depreciation? So we see our annual depreciation charge here as large D sub T. And what is the book value of the asset after 2 years? So here we know that we can take book value at year t is equal to our first cost minus t, the number of years we are along the timeline. We're given 2 years times our annual depreciation charge. Our first step is to calculate our annual depreciation. So we know that we have a formula for this. So first cost minus S over N. So 60,000 minus 10,000 over 5, or 10,000 per year. So 50,000 over 5 is equal to 10,000. Then we can calculate the book value at year t. So that's at 2 years. So we take our first cost minus 2 times our depreciation charge. So 60,000 minus 2 times 10,000 per year. And that's from here. And then we're able to calculate $40,000. Let's move on to our second depreciation method. This is the declining balance, or DB method. This is also known as fixed percentage, where annual depreciation is estimated by multiplying the book value at the beginning of a year by a fixed or uniform percentage, small d, and this is often represented as a decimal. If d is equal to 0.1, for example, then 10% of the book value is removed every year, where this small d is representing that annual depreciation rate. The maximum annual depreciation rate for the DB method is twice the straight line rate, where D max is equal to 2 over n. When this rate is used, the method is called double declining balance, or DDB method. So let's look at a little example. So if n is equal to 10 years, then the DDB rate will be 2 divided by 10, or 0.2, which just means that 20% of the book value is removed every year. So now let's look at our depreciation charges. We can still get this by multiplying D, this fixed depreciation rate, times the book value at the end of the previous year. We can also find the actual depreciation rate for each year T relative to the first cost B. So T just means where we are along that timeline between 0 and n. And so we can find the actual depreciation rate each year using our fixed depreciation rate and our number of years. What if we do not know the book value at a previous year? We can use what we were given on the last slide, so our first basis, and then that actual depreciation rate for that given year to determine our depreciation charges for that year. We can also calculate our book value in year T using our first cost and then also our fixed depreciation rate raised to the year T, or our book value from the previous year minus the depreciation charges for that year. The other element that we can calculate is the implied salvage value after n years. And that's equal to the book value at that year, which is equal to, again, this same expression that we saw above. And I want to note, if the estimated salvage value, which is normally given in the problem, is less than the implied salvage value, which you would be calculating, then the asset is not fully depreciated when its expected life is reached. Let's talk about some of the year's digits SOYD depreciation. This is a classical accelerated method that removes much of the basis in the first 1/3 of the recovery period. This is obtained by multiplying the basis minus the salvage value of an asset, B minus S, by the ratio of the number of years remaining in the recovery period to the sum of the year's digits, where sum is equal to n times n plus 1 over 2. And we are able to find both the depreciation charges and then also the rate of depreciation. And so the rate of depreciation is expressed as small d sub t equal to n, the total recovery period, minus t, the number of years we are along that timeline, plus 1 over sum, where sum is still equal to this value. Let's look at a simple example. So the cost of the asset, so that initial cost or that basis B, is equal to 10,000. The estimated salvage value S is equal to 2,000. The useful life of the asset is 5 years, and we're able to use that value to calculate the sum, which is equal to 5 times 5 plus 1 over 2. That means it's 5 times 6 over 2, which is equal to 30 over 2, or 15. We can calculate the depreciation charges each year by taking our sum and here and our n minus t plus 1, 5 minus 1 plus 1, so 5 over 15, times the difference between our initial cost and our salvage value. So plugging that all in, we get 2,667. Then we can use this to determine the book value. So for year 1, the book value is going to be equal to the book value at the previous year, which is just the initial cost of the asset, since that's at year 0. And then we're going to subtract our depreciation charge, which is calculated right here, and we get 7,333. So we would repeat this process for each year, calculating first our depreciation charge and then our book value, and we would eventually get to our final book value, which is our estimated salvage value for this problem. Now let's talk about MACRS, or the Modified Accelerated Cost Recovery System, which was introduced in the U.S. Tax Reform Act of 1986. This is the required depreciation method for all depreciable assets, and the IRS has prepared tables to assist in these calculations. So you can see here that the depreciation charge, large d sub t, is equal to small d sub t, which we can get from our tables, times b, that initial cost. We're also able to determine the book value by subtracting the depreciation amount by the previous year's book value, or by subtracting the total depreciation for years 1 through t minus 1 from the first cost. To recap, you can see that these 4 methods help you determine how the book value of an asset changes over time based on different assumptions. You can see that the straight line value assumes that we're decreasing by the same amount every year. You can see that these other methods assume more of an accelerated depreciation. So you can consider which method is best for determining your depreciation charges when you're working in an agency.